So I had pretty big plans for the last week. I wanted to get a lot of work done, but I realized at some point just being in touch with myself and how I'm feeling, my mental state, right? I realized that I need to actually go in the opposite direction and work less and not more. And that's a that's a very difficult thing for me because I tend to define, like a lot of people, I tend to define myself through how much I can work, how much I can get done. So it creates a lot of anxiety for me to move in the opposite direction, to work less, to do less, to not meet my expectations, right? But I know myself and my body and my system well enough to realize when that is actually not a good thing. And I've had many experiences in my life where I realized there is a need in me to push more, to do more, to ignore my emotions and just push through and do it. And sometimes that's the right choice. Sometimes you have no other choice. But at other times, I realized it's not the right choice. And actually, the stillness and doing nothing and subtraction. So I think we live in a culture of addition. We always want more things, more of this, more of that, more knowledge. We want to accumulate. So it's a very accumulation driven culture. And this also affects our mindset. So we are becoming people that want to accumulate. And we want to accumulate more, we want to read more, we have all this information coming in and it's actually clogging up our system. And even the food, right? A lot of people overeat and it's just having the opposite effect. It doesn't give us more enjoyment of life, but it gives us less. So that's kind of the reason why I did that, why I worked only the 3 hours per day last week. I actually worked less. I did finish my client work that I had to do for the week, but apart from that, I didn't really work a lot on my business. And I took long walks in nature, like I took like 3 hour walks, I think 4 or 5 of those, just walking in nature, listening to a good audiobook, like just being with myself. And it's funny when you do a long walk, like a 3 hour walk, you start and then you still feel pretty good about it. But then when you hit the 1.5 hours, you're like, actually, I like to be home now, but you can't. You still have to walk, right? So it's funny, but it's very therapeutic. It clears the mind. My sleep was very good. I had like some of the highest sleep scores in a long time. I mean, I take a lot of supplements as well, like glycine, different types of magnesium, stuff to regulate my adrenal glands. But the walking definitely helps, and the natural sunlight, as you can see, reflected on my face a little bit at least from outside. I mean, it's winter here all across the world, unless you live somewhere where it's extremely warm. I had someone in the DMs tell me, "Oh, it's super warm. It's summer here." I'm like, "Okay, that's great for you. It's not summer here. There's not a lot of sun here in Austria." But yeah, you gotta get your natural sunlight, and that really helps with that. So, what did I learn from this 3 hours a day of work? I guess, yeah, the one thing is the busyness to avoid feeling. So, and I think a lot of people run that pattern, and it's just when I do something, like when I look at my calendar and I have like the time blocks there and it's chock full, like the calendar is just full. I feel kind of like it's weird. Like some people, when they would see that, they would say like, "Oh my God, like how can you do that?" But for me, it gives me a sense of security. I'm almost like yes, I'm making use of the day, right? But I mean, the thing with that is, like I say here, it's sometimes I do it to, or probably a lot of the time, I'm just questioning my own patterns. Really, I'm doing it to avoid feeling because I'm scared of some aspect of my life not working how I want it to work, or I'm unhappy with a certain part of my life. And I just feel that by doing a lot, I can like solve all of that. Or like just when I'm really exhausting myself, I feel like, yes, I've done everything that's in my power to do, and now I can relax, which is retarded, right? Because why shouldn't I be able to relax without exhausting myself? It's not a good pattern to run in the long term, right? And I mean, the other thing is that the constant busyness it doesn't allow for stuff from the deeper parts of me, of you, of us, of our subconscious, the stuff that we feel, we know, but we don't think so much about. Like maybe it's a big life decision, or maybe it's just processing. Like I came out of a 4-year relationship just about 6 months ago, and I'm still processing certain things about that. Or maybe it's even about your job or your career, and there is a misalignment. But we don't want to feel that. We don't want to feel the misalignment. We don't want to feel the problems maybe, or stuff that's just uncomfortable. Like I, for one, and maybe you too, but we don't want to feel that. So we get busy, either, and busyness can be like workaholism, right? That I'm certainly a workaholic in some respects. If you ask my past girlfriends, they will probably tell you that too. And it can also be entertainment, it can be socializing, it can be anything where you bombard yourself with stimulation from whatever source, and you're using that to suppress what is happening on the deeper layers of your being. I'm just reading a book by Gabor Mate, who's a trauma and a psychologist. I think he's a psychiatrist even. He worked a lot with people with addiction, and he also said that for a very long time, whenever he was in a queue at the bank or wherever, he would always have a book with him, because if he just had a few moments where he wasn't occupying his mind, he said he felt his mind was like this raging animal that was just, it had to like to bite, to gnaw on something, and he felt that if he didn't give it something, like a book, reading a book while he's waiting in queue, that it would devour him, right? So that's also like an escapism pattern, if you want. But the thing is, when we keep like feeding, like we just keep stacking information and in stimuli, which is the plural of stimulus, on top, then we don't really get in touch with those deeper layers. And the deeper layers is where the processing of emotions, where the deeper thinking, all the connecting of the thoughts, the stuff that's happening in your life, direction you want to take your life, like all these more subtle forces which you can't grasp, right? They're there within you, there within your mind, but you can't, like, sometimes you can't name them, you can't grasp them. Like journaling, okay, that helps to bring your thoughts out, or like just spending time with yourself, right? But if you always have the stimulation and the input, like your processing power is used up on just processing the inputs, which is pleasant sometimes because we can avoid kind of the unpleasant things. But I feel that, and I'm 37, right? And I've had quite a few pleasant experiences in my life, and I've also had quite a few very unpleasant experiences in my life. And I feel that from facing the very unpleasant experiences, and I used to do divorce coaching with fathers after post-divorce, helping them to stabilize, process the breakup and all of that. And even from my own story, I realized that a lot of the strength and growth came from facing the unpleasantness. And it's the same in business. There's a lot of things that are just unpleasant, or maybe you're scared of outreach, putting yourself out there, failing, making mistakes. And I feel that a lot of the juice in life is in the unpleasant things. And it's not a popular thing to say, but it's important to acknowledge that, in my opinion. And that also applies to just our mental processing and facing these deeper parts of us where there might be a mismatch, there might be a misalignment. Maybe it's with your partner, right? Maybe you're like, actually, I'm not happy in this relationship. But if you just keep stimulating yourself and distracting yourself, you'll probably stay much longer in that relationship than you actually want to, because there's just no breathing room, there is no space to process and to make a decision, because you don't want to feel into that negativity, into that unpleasantness. But that's actually where the lessons are. That's where the progress in your life is going to happen, by looking at that and then moving through it. So, I mean, a lot of the work about grief, about trauma, is about actually feeling the impact of what happened, so it can move through the system, right? So I'm doing a lot of breath work at the moment, which is per Wilhelm Reich. So he was going into like body armoring, and so basically the idea is that we hold emotions. If we don't want to feel something, we go numb, and we achieve that numbness kind of by contracting muscles. Because I don't know how the muscles are connected to feeling, but of course somehow they are connected to feeling. I'm not an expert on that, but what happens is when you contract the muscles, you create kind of a body armor. You go into a static state where you're not really feeling. So the emotion isn't really coming through you because it's painful. You don't want to feel that. So you tense up and you block the flow of the emotion. But the problem of blocking the flow of the emotion is that it can't move through your system. So it stays in your system. Like you can't really process it. And I mean, that can lead to a lot of problems later in your life. You know, like for me in my last relationship, it led to me ignoring things that were hurting me. Like when my ex-partner was doing things, the woman was doing things that weren't actually good for me, but I wasn't feeling my own emotions. I was like tense, I was blocked, so I couldn't process it. And if you can't process something, then you can't take the appropriate action either, right? So if somebody hurts you, natural reaction would be, you feel hurt, unpleasant, and then you say, okay, I want space, so like, fuck off, don't hurt me, I don't like that. But if you're stuck in your emotional processing, then you might stay in a situation that is harming you because your system isn't functioning naturally, basically. So I guess what I'm saying is that by not giving your system the necessary breathing room to feel the negativity, to feel the uncertainty, but there's also positive emotions, right, that happen when you enter boredom, when you enter a space where you're not constantly stimulating yourself. But if you're someone like me, like someone who likes to stimulate themselves, who likes to work a lot, who's defining themselves by their output, by their activity, then it's probably going to be painful starting out to create more time, more space in your life where you're not doing. It's going to probably confront you with parts of yourself that feel insecure, where you're feeling anxious, where you feel it's uncomfortable, right? But that's, in my experience and also what happened last week, that passes, right? And I've also read, yesterday I've read a piece, or I've listened to Dan Koh's piece on the dopamine detox, and he's done a recent one on that. I think it's his best performing blog post on Substack last weeks, months, I don't know. So it's a popular topic, and no surprise, right? Because most of us are overstimulated, and technology is designed in a way to overstimulate us because they want to bind us to their platform, their dating app, the social media platform, right? They want to encourage habit formation, which happens via, getting emotionally stimulated. Also, intermittent reinforcement is great in relationships as well. That was sarcasm, but so that the environment pushes us into overstimulation. It's a pretty overstimulating environment, so we have to decide ourselves to create a different environment, to take better care of ourselves, and to reject certain things that maybe society is doing, that our culture is doing, that aren't serving us. And I'll link to that article by Dan Koh below, and it was a great article. He also talked about walking, so that's something I've been doing the last week a lot, and it's great because you're not as tempted. I mean, if you have your phone with you, like I like listening to audiobooks, you've got to decide, how much stimulation do you want? But I feel like even listening to an audiobook or something that is at least focused on one topic is better than if you're bombarding your brain with so many different ideas, like with the feed on X, or with even worse, like there have been studies how bad short form video is actually for the brain, and I don't doubt that. I think X is still a little bit better than just scrolling on TikTok, but it's pretty disruptive because you have so many different ideas. It can be stimulating, of course. It's not. I'm not saying it's bad in all cases and always avoid that or something like that. I don't think there's black and white in the world really like that. But it has to be used intelligently. So it can be very stimulating when you're looking for ideas. Like I get very inspired also when I go on the feed on X. But when I get lost in the feed and I'm just like doing it to entertain myself, I notice it's very detrimental for me. But that's not, and talking about stimulation, that's not the only kind of stimulation I was talking about, because even working on something is a form of stimulation. And taking a step back and entering a more reflective state, entering a more calmer state, like even winter right now, right now it's winter. And if you look at the natural seasons, you have spring where everything is waking up, right? Then you have summer, everything is in bloom, full bloom, like there's like beauty all around. Then you have autumn and things are slowly settling down. The animals are whatever collecting their stuff. I'm not an animal expert. Collecting their stuff for the winter, right? Everyone's getting ready or getting the firewood if you have a wooden, if you're heating with wood, right? So you got to prepare for the winter, and then there's the winter. And then even in the winter, you can imagine there's the snow cap over everything, the plants that are under the earth that haven't died, that are far enough under the earth, they're sleeping, as certain animals are sleeping, like nature is kind of sleeping, is resting. And I used to have a teacher, she was teaching me improv, she was into acting, she was an acting teacher, and she also talked about that, and she said that as humans we also need these cycles. And I think in today's society we have lost touch with the natural cycles, like even the circadian rhythm, like the sunlight, maybe the moon, right? If you're a woman, you might be more in touch with that. But we've lost touch with the sunlight because we have our own sunlight, like these little, I like the term glowing rectangles, right? Because it's a small glowing rectangle, then we have bigger glowing rectangles. So we have our own little glowing rectangles, our fake little suns that we use to light up, to put light into our eyes, right? And there's like the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is like somewhere behind the visual nerve, and it recognizes the light. And okay, there's some fighting around. Is it the blue light? Is it any type of light? I don't care. I have like blue light glasses, but any strong light, any light that's just unnaturally strong in the evening is gonna wake you up. It's just logical. And I mean, these are great, but the easiest way is to just turn off the glowing rectangles in the evening, right? And not do that. And that's also hard for me because I like stimulation. I'm like, in the evening, I'm like, you could do something interesting, maybe play a game, watch a movie. But I know it just fucks me up. It's like caffeine for me, right? So it's a big topic, stimulation, and kind of managing your system and asking yourself, in what state is my system? And system meaning your mind, your brain, your body, your nervous system. In what state is your system the most productive, the most healthy, right? And a lot of us are overstimulated. We're like wired. And it feels so productive. And there's a lot of research into sleep as well. And sleep deprivation it's kind of tricky because we have this subjective experience of feeling like, no, I'm fine. I can deal with fewer hours of sleep. I'm good. I'm like, and there's like 1% or something of the population. And there's been some research into that. So the actual number of people that can get by with like 5 or 6 hours of sleep, it's like a genetic mutation. There's like 1% of the population. But a lot of people think they're like part of that 1%, but they're not, right? They're just having a subjective experience where they are feeling like I'm fine on little sleep, but all the sleep experiments they did, that like impairment in motor function, memory, like driving a car. And it's like, I think two nights of proper sleep deprivation is like already approaching the alcohol limit for where you shouldn't drive anymore. So it's pretty intense, to be honest, the effects of sleep. But we think, no, I'm fine. So that's one thing. And just, yeah, I guess that's what I'm into. It's like, or what I'm going on about now is like the main factors for helping our system to perform at an optimum level, right? And there's all the foundational stuff like eating, moving, sleeping, right? Like getting proper sleep each night, eating food that doesn't screw up your body because it's processed, because maybe you're not so good with carbs. Some people are messed up by carbs because you're eating stuff that is just like not good for your body. Maybe you have a latent allergy that doesn't really show up like that intensely, but it's just chronic. Like gluten, I felt a lot better after eliminating gluten. A lot of people are like, no, I love bread, I love cake. I'm like, that's great. I don't eat that stuff because I just feel better without it, right? And sometimes it's counter culture to do that. Like even now when I'm talking about, okay, working 3 hours, there's going to be people watching that. They're going to be like, Lucas, like you're not even serious about your business if you're working 3 hours. Fuck off, unsubscribe, right? That's fine, right? Or there's people who are like, they want to go out on the weekends. And if you want to have a great sleep schedule, I'm not saying you can't go out on the weekends, right? But where's the priority? Do you go out every weekend and until the early morning hours, Maybe that's your thing. It's fair enough. Everybody can decide what they want to do. But if you want to optimize your physical performance, you want to optimize for longevity, you're probably not going to do it because it's just not healthy to always have a shifting sleeping window, right? Or the same with food, right? Like you want to eat cake when you have a birthday. Maybe there's a healthier variation of cake, like when my son gets a cake from me, it doesn't contain sugar in the normal way, right? And I mean, there's fun ways to make cakes and stuff like that. I'm not necessarily a friend of that. Like I like efficiency. There's nothing efficient about cake and about sweets. It's just, I think it's useless. But people who love that, be my guest, enjoy that. Yeah, so going into the next point, boredom is actually productive. I think that's this, it's so paradoxical because we're like, no, if I'm working more, then I'm being more productive. Like working less, that's bad, right? I don't think so because oftentimes the solutions to problems, and I'm just, I threw away my this digital pencil here in my enthusiasm. Oftentimes we think, no, doing more, that's going to give more results. But like I alluded to previously, we have this latent intelligence, latent potential, and it's like an ocean. Like below the surface of the water, there's a lot of ocean there, right? Within you as well. And if you don't have a way of connecting with that, if you don't give space for these natural processes, and there's the default mode network, which is basically when your brain is at rest, it's still working, it's still processing, it's just trying to solve things in your life, right? But if you always bombard yourself with new inputs, if you're always stimulating yourself, then you can't really enter that state. So you won't have any shower thoughts, because if your life is like chock full of like your calendar, like with meetings and all of that, maybe for some people it works. I don't know how Elon Musk does it. He is a very creative guy. He has some solutions for that. It would be interesting to. I read his biography, and I don't think there was anything in there. I think he's just possessed in a good way, right? Maybe in a good way, but which doesn't mean that maybe it would help him as well if he would have more kind of this. And actually, it's in the book. Like he goes to like Burning Man, or he goes to parties. So maybe that's his way, where he's just like switching off from work and he's forcing himself into an environment where his mind can just roam and he can reassemble the parts of his life or like map out the new strategy. So if you go through the book, actually there's a lot of these. There's hints at this process, that he's going through this process, that he's like processing the acquisition of Twitter, where is it going, and that he's got this thinking process that is not only like surface level on the logical mind, but that is like an integrated thinking process. So I think we all need that, and the boredom is often we think it's a bad thing, but I think it's very productive, because we get in touch with all these deeper layers of our being, because we are generating the opportunity for integration. And if we don't have the space, then the solutions don't have any space to appear in, because there's no space where they could appear in, right? It kind of makes sense, but there's this, and I think what I said in the beginning, we are in a culture of addition, and I think oftentimes the solution that we're looking for is subtraction. Like, we need to get rid of stuff. We need to get rid of food that is not good for us. We need to get rid of people that aren't supporting where we want to go, that are distracting us, diverting our energy. We need to remove stimulation from our life. And it's very counterintuitive, because I always feel like, oh, when I'm consuming more, I'm learning more, I'm doing more. But actually what it does, and if I'm self-aware, it clogs up my mind. Like, if I spend like 3-4 hours in the morning, I'm just like on Twitter, writing with people, engaging, so many different ideas. Sometimes it's stimulating. Sometimes good writing comes out of it, because I get inspired and I start writing. But usually it leads to a state of feeling mentally drained, like exhausted. And it's a different space to create from boredom and from an integrated place where you've had the time to process your emotions, to process your week, whatever is happening in your life. It just feels different. It feels like maybe physically like a fasted state, right? I love intermittent fasting. I don't eat from the evening at 6 usually until the next day at 11 a.m. I don't eat anything until then. I don't eat any carbs until 3 p.m. in the afternoon. And it's different. Your body feels different, and the mind is the same. So it's kind of like you're fasting with your mind, which also links with what Dan Cole talks about, the digital detox. He calls it monk mode. I've done that a lot in the past. Like I've mentioned somewhere, I spent a whole year meditating 7 hours a day, then another year meditating 5 hours each day, and for many, many years meditating like 2 or 3 hours a day. Currently I do like 45 minutes in the morning and some additional stuff in the evening when I feel like that, on most days usually. And it's different, because you have much more space in your mind and in your entire system, right? I mean, it's a complex topic, and there are many moving pieces here, but that's my main message for this video here, right? Then taking 3-hour walks is great. I'm reading off my notes. Like the walking is just brilliant for aforementioned reasons. The lighting, just the movement, it's a little exercise. Your body is getting active. It's your lymphatic system, so it's like detox. And it's just good for your mind. You get oxygenated. So Jim Kwik, he's a memory and the brain expert, teacher, coach. He said that whatever is good for your heart is going to be good for the brain, because they are very connected. And the brain, of course, it needs a lot of energy, needs a lot of oxygen. So if your cardiovascular system is good, it's going to be good for your mind as well, because the brain is an organ, right? And of course for thinking. And I think what I really like about going on long walks is I'm a little bit an ADD person, like attention deficit, and I'm reading that very interesting book by Gabor Mate, Scattered Minds, on the topic right now, how that is actually developmental, not only genetic and all of that, but it forces you into a form, right? You're out, you're walking, and then you don't have access to certain kinds of stimulation, like maybe your computer, because it's at home, right? Maybe like your TV or maybe your phone. It's like you're out, you're walking, and it's kind of predefined what you're going to do, because you have to walk back home, right? And that helps. It helps me to just focus, because I know, okay, now is the time to walk. Now is the time to feel myself, to breathe, maybe to listen to an inspiring audiobook. And it helps me. It kind of creates a form that I can fit into in a positive way, right? And there's other solutions. There's an app I use that's called Freedom, which you can use to block certain apps or to block certain websites. So that's what I use for I try to keep my mornings and my evenings device free, and that's something you can use as well. And I think that helps with subtracting stuff from your life and entering into a period where you're working less, where you're stimulating yourself less, maybe where you're doing a digital detox, right? And yeah, the last point is kind of interesting. So I resist feeling too good. And that's something I actually observed today, because yesterday I went to bed at 10 p.m. And it's reasonably early. Like usually I go to bed at 11, at latest 12. So I have full transparency. I'm not perfect when it comes to my sleep, but since I kicked caffeine again, it has gotten a lot better. But I got to bed at 10, right? I had a decent night, and I didn't stimulate myself with anything last night, right? I was just like listening to an audiobook, like to the Iron John book, which is about male initiation, archetypes, and what does it mean to be a man in today's world? How do masculine and feminine relate? What is the journey of a man? How does a boy become a man? And very interesting questions. And I didn't stimulate myself. I had this feeling like, ooh, I really want to watch a movie, but I didn't do it because lately I'm realizing this kind of urge to like stimulate myself is not good for me. It's like good in the moment, it's pleasurable. I feel very entertained, depending on the movie, right? But yeah, the aftermath of that is usually not positive. So I didn't do that yesterday, and I woke up. And that's another thing I read about, which is apparently if in the evening you are stimulating yourself a lot, like you play a game that's very stimulating, you watch a movie, like you do something very stimulating, then your brain downregulates, like your dopamine receptors, apparently they downregulate and they become less sensitive, because there's something called, I think it's hedonic adaptation, right? And they talk about the hedonic treadmill. So whatever you achieve in your life, if things are great, then it downregulates a little bit. So you always keep like reaching. And Dr. Huberman, he also talks about it. He says dopamine is not a goal achievement brain chemical, it's a goal striving brain chemical. So it makes you want to pursue something, right? Among other things, I'm not saying that's only what it does, but that's how he put it. And so I woke up this morning, no stimulation yesterday, great sleep, like Bilderbuch, like, I don't know how you can say that in English, like perfect evening. And I woke up and I felt elated. Like in the morning I woke up and I was like, this is great. I'm feeling so good. I'm feeling elated, and I went out for a run. I did my workout. And then I came home, did my workout, and I was finished with everything, and I thought, now a coffee would be really good, right? Because I already felt good, and I felt like, how can I push that a little more? But then I realized I've done that in the past a lot, and usually how it goes is I have a great night, I have a great night of sleep, fantastic start into my day, then I have the coffee, then I'm super hyped. And then in the evening, and it doesn't matter for me when I drink my coffee, it always screws up my sleep. Like even at 9 a.m., I've tried that. Even a small coffee, it screws up my sleep. So I was like, interesting, right? So I have this desire for like, I don't want the boredom. I don't want a day that's like not like super hyper. Like I like the super hyper stuff. So I realized that, and I was like, no, I'm not gonna do it, because I know when I do it, I'm going to have a shitty evening, and then tomorrow I'm not going to feel so good in the morning. And when I don't feel good in the morning, then I'm like, I should have a coffee, right? So there's this like very bad spiral that I get into with caffeine. But for you, it might be a different kind of stimulation. Maybe for some people that's alcohol, maybe games, maybe whatever, right? Maybe going to the casino, I don't know, right? So I realized that, and I was like, no, this is a little bit counterintuitive, not going with the feeling good, but with what would feel good immediately, but more using my mind to plan for the future, being more logical, analyzing it, and my feelings were saying, have a coffee, it's so much fun, you can have a coffee, then you're gonna be really productive, which isn't true either, right? I've falsified that claim through my own experience. It's not true, right? A lot of the times when I had a coffee, like a big coffee, I was just doing nonsense, like super hyper nonsense, right? In a very super hyper state, but I wasn't. Drinking coffee doesn't guarantee that I'm productive, right? And there was this idea in my head that it does. It doesn't. At least for me, not. If it does for you, fantastic, right? And that's just, I think that's one of the core insights here is, I think the first thing what motivated me to do this was just listening to my emotions, feeling like, oh, I'm overwhelmed, I want to push myself last week, right? I want to do more, I want to get this done, and feeling that something's off. Like I'm cutting off a big part of my feeling, of my experience, just to soldier on, to get through this. Fair enough, like I said, sometimes that's necessary, that's what you have to do. Sometimes maybe that's the right thing to do, at other times not so much. So just being in contact with myself, feeling that, realizing, no, this is not good, and making the counterintuitive decision to step back, to take more time for myself, so that I make room for all these subconscious processes, give my default mode network the opportunity to chime in, to get active, to solve things for me, also to process all the gunk that hasn't been processed before because I was bombarding myself with stimulation and I wasn't giving myself the opportunity to process that. And from that place, from a more integrated place, I'm taking different actions and I'm being present in a different way, not in a way where I'm kind of sprinting, where I'm chasing something maybe in a desperate energy, maybe in a very tense energy. It's a different quality of being, and also creates a different quality of work, like the product or the service, whatever you do for work, is going to be different from that state as well, because you're just more whole, you're more connected with yourself, and the ideas are coming from a deeper place, right? And the other thing is also just having this self-awareness, and I think Robert Bly said that in Iron John, the book I'm listening to right now. He said that metacognition is the highest form of human intelligence. So metacognition is basically thinking about your thinking, which includes self-awareness, analyzing your thoughts. And I think that's very important in behavior change, of course. And when we look at behavior change, we can also see that there are parts of the brain that are taking care of automatic behaviors, that are habits. And there, of course, we have a prefrontal cortex where we can consciously think about things. An interesting thing they found out is that when we make a certain thing conscious, we interrupt the habitual response to the behavior. So that can be bad when you have an activity that you want to do, like you play a musical instrument, maybe it's you're having sex, right? It's something that requires you to be present in your body, be present with, you're getting feedback, like feedback from another person, from your audience, whatever. And you're in like this process, right? In an alive process where you're doing something in the moment. And in that, when you become very self-conscious, it's going to interrupt and I mean, that's how skills work. If you look at NLP, you have like unconscious incompetence, you don't know what you don't know. Then you have conscious incompetence, you know what you don't know. Then you have conscious competence, you're learning, you know what you know. And then you have unconscious competence, which is you don't know what you know again, but you're skilled this time, right? You know how to do it. And certain things, there's this phrase also, it's called let it rip. It's basically on peak performance in sports also, they talk about that. There's an interesting book by Sinzer, is his name, about mental fortitude and how to develop a proper mindset. I think he also talks about this. He says that when you let it rip, you don't question yourself, you just do. Because when you're doing, then it's kind of like the thing is doing itself. So you're not thinking with your conscious mind about it. You have everything installed, you have practiced. That's why you practice so many times, whether that's basketball or whatever you're doing, whatever skill. And then you step away from it. You don't want to interrupt it. So when you make it conscious there, you're interrupting your natural achievement mechanism, however you want to call it, like the competence you have developed. But if you want to interrupt a negative habit, just by making it conscious, you're stepping out of the automatic pattern into the prefrontal cortex. You're becoming conscious of it, which is awareness, right? So, which also explains why awareness is so big in changing your behaviors and changing what you do on a consistent basis in your life, which links to what I just said, which is, I know it links to it, but I forgot what specifically I was saying. So it's the awareness of what you're doing. Yeah, metacognition, right? And the metacognition also in the context of what I was talking about here, when you want to have a coffee, you want to go out on the weekend and then thinking about, okay, like what the last 5 times I did that, how was my Sunday after that? Is that something that I want, right? And being able to differentiate between the emotional pull of that, like, oh, I have an impulse, I want to do that, and being reasonable, rational, right? The gift of rationality of our prefrontal cortex, and thinking about it and being like, is this in the interest of future me? Will Sunday or Monday me be happy? Will in 5 years me be happy about my choice now or not? And then making a smart decision. And creating more space, I feel, and in my experience in our life, also creates more space for metacognition, for looking at our life, for processing these things and making decisions that are more aligned like with the long-term trajectory we want to go on. I hope you have enjoyed my video. I'm trying a new format here, a little tweet and a short video. It should be a short video. It was a very long video. I'll link below the link to Danko's podcast, or not podcast, his Substack newsletter, which also includes the YouTube video where he just reads the thing, right? And I will also include a link to my own scheduler, because I coach people on changing their habits, changing their behavior. I mostly focus on helping people dial in their mindset and their foundational habits, as I call them: eating, moving, sleeping. And there's a lot of nuance there. There's a huge potential for improvement if you dial those in, like just in the quality of how you feel every day, in the energy you have, in your mental clarity. And just what I do is I help people dial in those behaviors. I coach them, I work with them over a period of time with specific goals in order to get better results at whatever their main focus is, right? I love working with entrepreneurs, people who work for themselves, just because I'm inspired. That's also why I ghostwrite for founders. I just like people who do things, who make things happen in the world. It just brings me joy to help people who bring something useful into the world. My mission is I want to help them bring more useful things into the world, to be happier while they do that, to have a more positive impact on the world. That's how I have a positive impact on the world. So you will also find my scheduler link down below if you want to have a chat with me and check out how I can help you. And I hope this video was useful to you. I encourage you to reflect on your own life. I know it's counterintuitive. Maybe you want to take more space in your life. Maybe you want to work less, even though the voice in your head or the people around you say you shouldn't do that. Maybe it's the right choice for you as well. And yeah, just like the other things I discussed, the walking, leaning into boredom, I think these things are not discussed enough because we're living in an additive culture. We always want to add more, we want to have more, but we're getting constipated. Danko talks about that as well. He says mental constipation. I think it's a great analogy. We have physical constipation, too much food, the wrong food. We can also get mentally constipated, and I feel our mind is one of our biggest assets, especially if you're a knowledge worker. And chances are, if you're listening to me here on X, or I'm going to cross-post this to Instagram as well and to other platforms. If you're listening to me, then chances are that you're a knowledge worker, and it pays to optimize for a clear mind, because your life is just going to be a lot better. And the direction there might be less than more. So I won't say any more. Have a great day. Take care.